God bless America. Hello, everybody. I am the Talk Radio Protege. This is the Protege program. Thank you for joining me today. Welcome back to the Working Knowledge series. This video, The Right to Life. There is no right more basic than the right to life. If no right to life exists, then what is the point of any other right? What use is your right to choose if an outside party can invalidate your choice by obliterating your life? What right do you have to preserve your life if you don't have the right to that life in the first place? The founders of the United States of America recognized this when they named life as the first of the unalienable rights in the Declaration of Independence. This is the right that must, on principle, supersede all other rights. Your right to life must supersede the right of any other to choose or pursue happiness. If these rights are allowed to supersede the right of any other to life, then the right to life of all is placed at risk. This can be seen no better than in the fight over abortion. To make a long story short, suffice it to say that abortion has fleeted into and out of the public consciousness throughout American history. To make a long story short, suffice it to say that abortion has fleeted into and out of the public consciousness throughout American history. The advent of the current political climate surrounding abortion has to be the Supreme Court case of Roe v. Wade. This case enshrined in legal tradition that the right of a pregnant woman to choose supersedes the right of the unborn child to life, absolutely in the first trimester, and allowed states to place limitations on second trimester abortions, quote, for the purpose of protecting the health of the pregnant woman. Since then, politicians and activists have escalated this claim to such an extreme degree that it was the official position of a mainstream presidential candidate that the right to life did not extend to the unborn children as far into the pregnancy as the day they are born. Granted, the candidate said only that, quote, under our law, that is the case, but anyone who believes that this is the wrong policy does not hesitate to say so. This candidate refused to say so. The most extreme abortion activists, popularly known as feminazis, also decry any activity that might discourage to any degree a woman's desire to procure an abortion. The simple statement, "Have you considered adoption?" is considered offensive to these abortion extremists. This escalation has occurred due largely to the debate that still rages over when life, quote-unquote, begins, and I use begins with much chagrin because it is, by nature, an arbitrary concept. Things begin at arbitrary times. Nature runs processes on a firmly established clock, and there are few natural processes understood as fully as human pregnancy. It would be much more appropriate to base this distinction around when life is, quote-unquote, distinct. Think through this with me. How is a fetus created? A fetus is created when a fertilized egg implants within the uterus. How is an egg fertilized? An egg is fertilized via penetration by a sperm. What happens at the moment of penetration? From WebMD, at the instant of fertilization, your baby's genes and sex are set, end quote. The way that your genes are organized is unique to you. Therefore, the fertilized egg is a unique human being, distinct from its mother and no longer, quote-unquote, her body. To further understand the abortion argument, consider this thought experiment. What is the justification for the termination of a pregnancy in its earliest stages? The justification is ultimately that the termination is of something that is not a person. Feminazis would have our culture transformed such that there was no difference between aborting a pregnancy in its earliest stages and the wholesale slaughter of cattle, swine, and chickens for the convenience. Feminazis would have our culture transformed such that there was no difference between aborting a pregnancy in its earliest stages and the wholesale slaughter of cattle, swine, and chickens for the convenience of the people facilitating the slaughter. If this analogy disturbs you, you may not be as pro-choice as you thought you were. I tell the tale of abortion to demonstrate how totally the right to life can and has been undermined in this country, which I hope demonstrates to you how paramount it is to enshrine the right to life as superseding all other rights. To do so enshrines ancillary rights as well, rights which must be enshrined to ensure that it is not only the strong, wealthy, and charismatic that may revel in the right to life. If life is sacred, then naturally it is deserving of being preserved. There are two classes of people that, having the right to life, have the right to self-preservation: the defenders and the defenseless. The defenders have the ability to take their self-preservation into their own hands. They are strong, or they can fight, or they are proficient with weapons. They don't need others to take their self-preservation up because they can do it themselves. This is why the right is not to self-preservation, but to preserve life. There will be defenders who will defend only their own right to life. The rights of others they will abuse according to their whims. By the same token, there will be defenders who see it not just as right, but their duty to defend those who are being abused by the powerful. The right to life necessitates a protection of those who would intervene on behalf of one who cannot defend themselves. I know how some would read this and would react to my designating of some people as powerful. Let me say that I do not believe that power should or even can be considered absolute in the context of defending life. Start over. I know how some people would hear this and would react to my designating as some people as powerful. I know how some who would hear this would react to my designating of some people as powerful. Let me say that I do not believe that power should or even can be considered absolute in the context of defending life. For example, in the general sense, men are physically stronger than women. However, put a powerful weapon in the hands of a woman, like a firearm, and suddenly the woman is more powerful than the man. Power, when it comes to preserving life, is only absolute in the sense that it is absolutely contextual. It also must be said that the differential of power between two parties does not necessitate that the party with more power is absolutely in the right or absolutely in the wrong. Returning to the difference between a man and a woman, if the woman seeks to deprive the man of his right to life without a just cause, she is in the wrong, no matter the power differential between her and her victim, and vice versa. It is redundant, but nevertheless necessary because of the current political climate, to say that this means that the state has just cause to intervene on behalf of an unborn child in the case of a sought abortion. The unborn are arguably the most defenseless of all mankind. They cannot speak for themselves, lobby on their own behalf, protest their treatment, or wield physical force in their own defense. Thus, protecting the act of defending life via enshrining preservation of life as a right reinforces the status of life as a right. The above being said, we must also acknowledge the right to preservation of life necessitates a right to wield power. After all, it is the wielding of power that places the right of one to life in peril, and in those circumstances, in order to preserve life, a minimum of equal power must be wielded in return. The uncertainty of life means that power must also be readily available. Measures that hamper the availability of power increase the differential of power between the assailant and the victim. Think through this scenario with me. The attacker is proactive. They decide what they will do, and they act. They may also take preparatory actions in advance of their assault. The victim is reactive. They must ascertain what the assailant will do, decide what they will do in response, and act. All quote-unquote preparatory actions must now be taken in the heat of battle. There's already a power differential because the victim must perform additional actions during the assault. Any restrictions on power that slow its brandishing will therefore disproportionately slow the victim of assault rather than the perpetrators, and thus will place life at greater risk rather than less. Perhaps the best example of the necessity of this right is the infamous gun-free zone. Everyone in the United States knows such names as Columbine, Sandy Hook, and Parkland. Locations of two things that gun-free zones have in common: a public school and a mass shooting that claimed the lives of dozens of people. Since 1990, public schools have been gun-free zones by federal mandate. Since then, the vast majority of schools have never had a violent incident, but those who have too often suffer numerous devastating losses. No one thinks that these attacks are just. No one thinks that the victims are to blame for the attacks. What no one is willing to say, at least no one in the mainstream media, is that these students, teachers, and staff are being forced to work in an environment that is unnecessarily dangerous. Thousands of faculty and staff, perfectly balanced and trusted with the education of the nation's children, apparently can't be trusted to keep our children safe. Students in recent years are demanding that schools be a safe place to live, work, and learn, the former two from post-secondary students more than secondary students, yet these same students do not demand that the people who may most readily protect them from danger be given the means necessary to facilitate that protection. This is my working knowledge on the right to life and the ancillary rights that go along with it, the right to preserve life and the right to wield power in pursuit of preservation of life. Thank you for watching. Come back next time. This has been Talk Radio Protege. Good night, and God bless.